Thank you very much, everyone. I think one of the most dangerous things you can do when giving a presentation is pull a technology stunt like that. I'm full of admiration for Jane. Just a couple of thoughts, actually, from me here. One of the things that seems to be apparent from all of these initiatives that we've seen here is that we've got a certain trend here towards something that's more global rather than the local and regionalized and siloed sort of approach. And we have a trend towards tools and actual advice and boilerplate and clauses that you can use, which is also kind of interesting because I'm actually with one foot in a philosophy department. And when I talk to my colleagues there and I say, well, I'm going to go off and advise a biobank project, they kind of think that it's a bit dirty, you know, to actually give them proper advice. So it's nice to see that it's that direction that we're going in, and it's kind of following the methods of science, isn't it? It's translational LC, rather than something that's just a critical reflection in a single individual case, and the development of tools, rather than trying to fix individual problems one at a time. So I think now's a good time, because I've got them under such great control, and we're dead on time, to open the floor, and I can see Søren jumping up already, so we'll start there.
It's sort of something which has been niggling me over the 2 days, and it's brought together sort of by Jane and others talking about our community and you just saying critical reflection. And I'm just wondering whether our community happens to be those people who sort of broadly think that biobanking is a good thing which is currently overregulated. And whether that is really sort of fully inclusive of all the stakeholders that are involved in this field, and how we reach out to those who don't share this view.
That was more a comment then, yeah. And who are you directing it to?
Yeah. Can I respond?
Yeah.
Do I have to push anything?
I think it's on.
So I think that's an important point, and one of the questions related to that I was going to ask Bartha, has your framework been discussed at all with the IRB community? Because it seems to me that that could be a useful tool to help IRBs feel more comfortable with some of these large data sharing projects. Have you had any discussion, or do you have plans to bring that to their awareness? And also for Jane, sort of the same question. Are you intending to get the IRB community involved in LC 2.0?
Right. Within 1 year, the participation of the 19 organizations and the 100 individuals led to 8 versions of the framework. Its adoption a month ago, its translation 2 weeks ago, and its appearance in UKB Journal 1 week ago. So the next steps forward are actually, by the way, it's on the back of the newsletter, upside down. That's if you want to read it. The next steps then is to start integrating it into the not only the research community conversation, but also definitely with IRBs and also with health ministries. One of the goals of data sharing, including genomic and health-related data together, is to achieve, if possible, or encourage or foster at least, or promote, the sustainability of universal healthcare systems. This is really important because if we can't stratify and target, we have what we have with H1N1, where everybody had to go get vaccinated willy-nilly because nobody knew who was susceptible or who was transmitter or who was a resistor. We're having it now with this knee-jerk reaction to Ebola, and so on and so on. So there are, to answer your question, also critical reflection that goes on. Policy does not grow on trees. This takes 2-3 years of critical thinking and talking in a practical way to the research community, to the GPs, to the people involved in biobank projects or in large international research consortia on cancer or whatever. So it's not one or the other. The LC community is not losing its critical edge. You come and you finally achieve this because you've been thinking, talking, and working about it for a long time. Now the IRBs are our next sort of public engagement exercise.
So I think that for me, it's not just IRBs. And I think it's really important that of course they're a very important regulator, but there's a lot more people out there who have an interest in LC issues in genomics or LC issues in biobanking. So I think what's crucial, though, as Bartha said, is really to have a strategy and understand that taking policy out, and you're an expert on this, is something that is incremental and very strategic in many ways, that you have to go forward. So you asked me if LC 2.0 and the e-workspace would be open to IRB people. Well, it's open to the world. And that's our intention, that anybody can have an activity zone, can come and see what's being done within that. And so we're really hoping to take advantage of 2.0 technology to make that easier for people. So that in actual fact, there will be a way of being involved in global activities, but also being able to see them laid out in one place. And maybe that's ambitious, but I think that it's a real way that we can start to gather all of the work that's being done in different fields. Because actually, sitting on this panel, I realize that in actual fact, there's all this LC work being done, and there's a real need to bring it together. Because, there's LC work in biobanking, but there's LC work in public engagement. There's lots of different LC work going on.
I'd be happy to mention these efforts at the Primer meeting, just letting them know about them, giving them a link, because I think the earlier we can engage the necessary stakeholders in all of these things, the faster the process goes.
Yeah.
Jane, we're setting up LC 2.0, and we're kind of telling lots of projects that they ought to have a governance structure, and LC 2.0 is kind of a free-for-all, open to the world. Is it going to get to a point where it's going to become unmanageable, maybe?
No, I don't think so. I think that there are policies that sit behind it. So if people want to set up an activity zone, there's certain things you have to just apply to do that. But once that's set up, then anybody can come and join it. So it's actually founded on good governance, and we're putting into practice all of the things that we know so well.
So it's a framework, and we're making other people fill it with life.
Yeah, thank you.
I saw a hand over there.
Okay, Linda Arago from Taipei again, and I'll say in advance that I'm usually a dissonant voice also. And, sitting here in the UK with a long-founded National Health Service, you've made presentations before in Taiwan, where there is a long tradition of social activism and populations wanting to be served by the national health system with a certain amount of trust there. I think it's very easy to accept that the UK Biobank is working for the good of the people of England. But from my view as being somewhat part of the Taiwan Biobank formation early on, since biotechnology is the new frontier of technology after the electronics boom. Taiwan did very well in the electronics boom, so did many Asian countries. And now they are jumping onto the biotech boom, again with huge government investment, expecting to make a lot of money off it and trying to get into the same league as the Western pharmaceutical companies, which of course now have huge interests in clinical trials. So what I see myself is that all of these forms, IRB, governance and all this, is really pretty directly copied, word for word, in form. The form is transferred to Taiwan, no doubt to Singapore, to Korea and elsewhere, with actually very little of the substance. And I think this is where a large part of the danger occurs, that somehow because institutions are set up that pro forma look like the same social function, they can hook into, publication and others. But coming from anthropology and sociology, I think that the IRB process, which has also been applied in parallel to medical practice, to the social sciences has had an incredibly damping effect. And it also has a very elitist effect. It has a very elitist effect in that only those who are at established institutions can be players in the game. And academia in the last 20 years has clearly become more and more stratified, more and more conservative in its social mission. And in other countries, often you see this very quickly changing with regime, as you might here also see with regime. So perhaps I'm voicing a critical perspective that any kind of codification or any kind of barrier, any kind of hurdle actually makes research less accessible to communities. And I refer to this particularly to things like in Washington State, when the local community wanted to investigate what was the outcome of nuclear contamination in that area from early factories. They had to do it from the bottom up. Nothing like that would ever be approved nowadays. Okay, maybe I'll rest my case there, but I think we've already seen the effects of IRB squelching a lot of sociological and anthropological participatory research. Okay, thank you.
Martha?
I'll start with your last comment, because there were a series of comments. The need to separate the biomedical IRB model from the social sciences model, I can't agree more. It's qualitatively and scientifically and culture-wise in terms of social, it's very different. In our university, we had separate IRBs for the social science because the biomedical kept coloring it, and everybody wanted consent forms even for observational research in the elementary schools, for instance, in education, which of course made no sense, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree with you that there are specific needs depending on the disciplines, and that the biomedical IRB model should not be easily transposed or automatically transferred. Your other issue about the sort of homogeneity of biobanking using, let's say, the preferred UK biobank model. No, we are following about 40 biobanks in my own center, at the Center of Genomics and Policy at McGill. And if you go to the details, not sort of just the overall organigram of having, you know, governance, a board and steering committees and other things, if you go beyond that and go beyond the SOPs for quality assurance, which of course hopefully are there, there's a great heterogeneity in terms of approach, in the nature of the kinds of biobanks that different countries are involved in. So my answer to your first comment is no, and the second one is yes.
Any more questions? You all look slightly tired.
Yeah, you should see. Oh.
Well, in that case, let me wrap up. And before I ask you to thank our speakers again, I'll just quickly say goodbye to all of you, because I'm going to be running off in a minute and I won't have a chance to say goodbye properly. So I'll abuse my position of power to do that. Goodbye. And maybe you'll join me to thank our speakers again. And I'll hand over to Roger.
Well, it's sorry, I'm not sure whether it's rude to start before you, but it remains, yeah, it remains only for me to do the pleasant things at the end here, the votes of thanks. I was at a conference in Brazil some years ago where each speaker seemed determined to identify some new recipient of their thanks, and so by the time I got on about the third day, it was a real challenge, but on this occasion it's very straightforward indeed. For the EGC, this has been an experiment. I think it's been a very successful experiment. We've had huge cooperation from Biobank. I think it's made a big difference to us, Rory, that you and your colleagues have been here to address these issues jointly with us. It's been wonderful. I want to start really with Alistair at the back, who kicked us off on Monday evening. It only seems a moment ago, but from Alistair all the way through to the final panel today, I want to thank our panelists, our speakers, and of course everyone who's participated in our discussions. both here and outside over tea and coffee. Someone asked me last night whether the proceedings of this conference would be published. Conference organisers often spring a nasty surprise on speakers without any warning at all. They say, wasn't that a great conference? We think we'd like to have a volume of papers. Well, we're not planning to do that, but of course the whole proceedings have been videoed. Well, I say the whole proceedings, I'll say Jane. I mean, sorry, Jane, we didn't manage to, I think, video what was going on outside over tea and coffee, but at least what's gone on in here has been videoed. We are hoping to make this available through the EGC's website, which is, should we say, work in progress, Adrian, or under construction still? It's being the new year. We will be in touch with everyone before then, but if anyone asks you, is it possible to see what went on at that conference, then the answer is yes, in due course. We hope next year the full proceedings will be available online. No conference is going to work even with wonderful speakers, unless the infrastructure for the conference and the professional support behind the scenes is in place. And having organised a national conference, I think in the third year I was in my university life, when this was dumped on me by the head of school in Sheffield as a privilege, I know what what a huge Herculean task it is to actually put a conference together. And so I want to thank, first of all, Susan Bassam and the conference team here at Wellcome, who've done a fantastic job. I don't think Susan is actually in the room right now, but she, of course, has been meeting and greeting downstairs as we've arrived and making sure everything ticks over smoothly. And the AV team, who performed a minor miracle. I'm sorry you've had to put up with my ineptitude in handling the accelerator and the brake. Thanks very much indeed for making it possible to get Dan Levy's connection sorted out yesterday when we were worried that we wouldn't have Dan's participation. So it's Mario, we'd like to thank you too for doing the necessary on that side of the room with the mic. You've roved very well, thanks very much indeed. And I think, of course last, but by no means least, and I hope this is, Tracy, am I am, okay. I am saying this the right time. Last but not least, Adrienne, for your unfailing, and I don't know, I mean, I'm lost for words actually, Adrienne, but we thought a few flowers might be a better way of saying thank you. Well, thanks very much, everyone, and I wish you a safe journey home, and I hope you have good and fruitful recollections of these 2 days, 2 and a bit days here in London.